Thanks, everyone, for being on today. I made the comment to one of our staff members that this is a conference call and a virtual world, and we're just living in it right now. So here's another example of gathering in a virtual space. So no, just we're operational. We need to keep the athletic department moving forward in as many ways as possible during this unprecedented time. And our focus when I put out a message to our staff is, we have to remember why we're here. We're here to serve our student athletes, our fans, our donors, our other staff members, our coaches, and we have to keep that in mind. We can't physically, be in the same space, but we can still support at the highest level, and so that's really our mentality as we face this. I think I talked to some of you last week that I thought last week we were sort of in the triage, organizational stage, and that this week we kind of see what, new normal is. But I think there's just continued to be sort of the triage, if you will, as things progressively, get to tighter, containment, not only in our community, but around the country and around the world. So I think we're still dealing with some of those matters, but also trying to move as many things forward in a normal way as possible. So we can open it up for questions as we see fit.
Ross, it's Brent Swarneman. Asking what is the football team doing to do virtual spring drills? And I'm kind of kidding there, but in terms of how is Jimbo handling everything in terms of not having spring drills, but doing what they can to kind of keep the guys active and working out and so forth?
Yeah, that's a great question, and obviously it's something that's top of mind, as we look into the, late spring and summer months and approach football season. Right now the only thing that we can do is we can really advise them on working out and making sure that they're safe. We can send them workouts. We can't monitor those workouts, meaning we can't get reports back from the student athletes. So we're just being proactive and making sure that our strength coaches are keeping, just a close eye on the health and safety of our student athletes. Right now, there's a restriction on athletic activity. The SEC, we decided on this as a conference. There's a restriction on athletic activity until April 15th, and so the question is, what happens on April 16th? We don't have that answer yet. I think we really have to get organized around what that looks like next week, so we can start to plan for, a potential return to any sort of athletic activity, meaning in a virtual sense. And so right now it's mainly just around, we can communicate with them socially. We can communicate with them regarding making sure that they are working out on their own and sending them, workouts, but it's really sort of voluntary. And then there's still decisions that have to be made on what happens, in a virtual setting, after April 16th. So in some ways, you're at a standstill from a football perspective until we really know more about, how this virus, impacts us, longer term.
Thank you.
Hey, Ross. Travis Brown with the Eagle here. I know the March 30 deadline is kind of coming up on the eligibility relief issue. How has that kind of unfolded since the last time we talked to you on debates on what that should look like? And has your stance or thoughts on it changed at all since the last time we talked to you?
My position on, supporting our student athletes to the best of our ability has not changed. I want to be as liberal as possible. And then really it's going to be up to the program, the coach, and the athlete to figure out, what's best for them. So we don't have all those answers yet. As part of we have a daily SEC conference call among athletic directors and the conference staff. And so that has been an agenda item every single day in terms of let's provide input, let's provide perspective. Is there any new information that's come to the table since yesterday? And so, we're learning more. The council, the NCAA council, will vote on this on Monday. And so we provided input on exactly, what all this means, and my perspective hasn't changed. The likelihood of winter sports, I think, has waned a little bit. So I think the focus is more on spring sports. But until all the input is in and all the feedback is gathered, and until the council, votes on Monday, we don't know for sure how everything will roll out.
Thanks.
Ross, it's Chip Howard. What kind of discussions, or have there been yet, on contingencies if this continues, and we're talking about this into July and August, about affecting the football season?
I think it's really too early to tell. I think the key that we're focused on is you sort of back up, from the first game, being Labor Day weekend. Some people were slated to open on, Thursday night. We're obviously slated to open on Saturday, September 5th. I think you have to back up from there and say, okay, here's what the current NCAA legislation allows you to have for, training camp dates. Here's when you can start. What has to happen, before that in order to prepare the student athletes, just from a physical standpoint, to make sure that their health and safety is forefront. And then you have to take from where we are today and move that forward and say, okay, when can we come back together? And those things sort of have to match up. And we just don't know when we're able to come back together to then start the planning of how do you back up from September 5th. I hope I'm explaining that the way I'm thinking about it to all of you. So I think it's too early to tell, Chip. But, we've obviously all thought about the worst case scenarios, and we know, how impactful and really, just devastating it would be, not only emotionally, but just financially, for many athletic programs across the country that have football. I think my comment to Chuck Carlton last week was everything rises and falls on football. And so that still applies. So it would have, major impacts across, our communities, our athletic program, the university, the confidence, the emotional piece of it. But it's really too early to tell because we don't know, when we're able to really come back together and have any sort of, face-to-face, interaction. Thank you. But that's how we're kind of approaching it, Chip, is, again, you just kind of go backwards from the game date, and then you go forward in terms of, how do we meet in the middle in terms of those dates, and how does it match up to preparation? And so all those things are being talked about as we plan, what the future does look like.
Hey, Ross, this is Suzanne Halliburton in Austin. I've got kind of a two-part question. You're talking about financially already with spring sports and the basketball taking a financial hit. Is A&M in any shape or form have to tighten their belt a little bit, going into the summer financially? And with construction projects, things like that. And two, do you anticipate the NCAA maybe tweaking the rules for summer practices and how much coaches can get involved if the spring football season workouts are shelved?
Great question. I'll take the second one first. Yes, to me, as part of this whole, planning of how do you prepare, our fall sports for the fall of 2020, assuming that we're able to get back together physically, then I believe there needs to be some acclimation period, if you will, in May or June or July or whatever. It doesn't need to be a full-on, spring practice, or to me, it's more of an NFL mini camp style, right, where there's very little contact, if any. Maybe it's helmets and shorts. And I believe there needs to be some sort of prep period during that time, assuming that we can all, physically come back together. So those are the things that are being discussed when we're talking about matching up, the preparation period. The financial period, yes, there's definitely going to be a tightening of the belt. Those details are really a moving target at this point in time. We don't know the full impact of the NCAA basketball tournament, cancellation on the NCAA distribution, which goes to the SEC, which then they distribute that equally. And so we don't know what our final SEC distribution will be for fiscal year 2020. We anticipate it being less, but we just don't have that number yet. We also don't know the total impact yet on where we are offering refunds on baseball and softball and track. So we don't have a final number. Those things are still being processed and people are still deciding. So we have that. We don't know yet a financial impact of less concession revenue, particularly on the baseball side, because, we have great crowds in baseball and produce a lot of income. We don't have that final number yet. And then we don't know what we're saving in terms of, travel cost and operational cost. And so all those things are being formulated, right now, but we anticipate there being a tightening of the belt as you described it. We just don't know exactly what that'll look like quite yet.
And just a quick add-on to that, does the A&M financial athletic budget is the price of oil going to impact you all at all? I guess maybe with donors.
Yeah, the price of oil being here, about 10 months now, I've learned quickly that, our donors, rely on the market, as it relates to oil and all the subsidiary, operations that flow into that economy. And so, the impact will be felt within our donor base, which then ultimately could impact us. And, the approach that we've taken in the 12th Man Foundation is that we still need to continue to develop relationships. We need to communicate as best we can, obviously in the virtual setting. And so our staff in the 12th Man Foundation is still working. They're just working in a different environment, but we have to continue to cultivate our donors. We have to continue to build relationships to make sure that we stay in touch with them. And so, again, it's kind of one of those things. We don't have the full answer yet. We know there's an economic impact of oil in the state of Texas. How that ultimately plays into our financial picture is still yet to be determined.
Thank you.
Hey, Ross, Zach Taylor. With College Station having issued the shelter in place and only essential businesses or essential personnel are allowed basically to go to work right now, who qualifies as essential for the athletics department and who is at their office right now or able to go up to the office?
We are operating our sports medicine facility. So we have a West Campus training room and we have the Bright Complex. So those training rooms are being operated. So that staff would be considered essential, and they're on a rotational basis. And, we take the temperature of our athletes when they walk in the door, and obviously there's washing of the hands, and we're taking lots of safeguards with social distancing, those sort of things. So that would be one layer. Our nutrition staff, our nutrition center is open. The Slocum Center is open for grab-and-go meals, 3 meals a day, and so we've averaged about 125 to 140 meals per day since we started that last Monday. So that staff would be included in that essential group. And then, we have to maintain our facilities. We have to make sure that, we don't have, any equipment break or anything like that. We have to mow the grass. And so kind of our maintenance, our facility crew, and a lot of that's centralized with our campus partner, SSC. And so that would be essential staff. Our IT folks, to make sure that our IT operations are up and running. They can do a lot of that remotely, but if they need to go up to the office and check servers or make sure things are operational, that group would be included. And then we are able to have our computer lab open for our student athletes from an academic standpoint. And so, again, social distancing, all the best practices. If we need to get student athletes in there for our computer labs, that was deemed essential by the university. But otherwise, the instruction is, to our coaches and our athletic staff is I'm working from home. And that's the message, is that we need to adhere to this shelter in place, and the sooner we can contain this, the better off we all are. So that's how we're operating.
Thank you.
Hey, Ross, this is Owen. Do you know how many athletes, the number of athletes that are still living on campus or around the campus that haven't gone home?
Yeah, still living on campus. The one thing that we've tried to do is just stay on top of sort of the census, if you will, of all of our student athletes. And so let me get you the number that we had. As of last week, we had 27 student athletes that live in the dormitories, the residence halls here on campus. 8 were in town as of last week. And so we believe that number has gone down a little bit. So that 8 has gone down. We're actually we're going to have another census call today to get those final numbers. But a very small amount. We allow our student athletes, if they want to live, off campus, they can do that. So we had a very small amount live in the residence halls, and then a very small amount that were in town. As of last week as well, we had about 265 student athletes that were still in College Station. We believe that number has gone down a little bit, and we'll have some more data on that later today, if not tomorrow.
Thanks.
Hey, Ross, Travis Brown again. I noted with how things are right now in the world of recruiting, things it takes a little bit of ingenuity, and I saw that y'all are doing the Madden tournament between coaches and players. Kind of, from your perspective, how did something like that come up, and what hurdles did y'all have to make sure were okay compliance-wise to make sure something like that and a good idea like that could happen?
Yeah, the thing about the dead period is obviously we can't have visitors, on campus, and we can't go off campus, and really just give the credit to our football recruiting staff, for coming up with that idea. Compliance signed off on it, through the SEC, and just a great way to engage and be creative and do something unique. I think that's what I think the creative skills in all of us are coming out in lots of different ways, and that was just a neat way to, again, stay connected. Do something unique. Obviously, video games are popular. My 13-year-old son, I got to get him outside more often because he's always playing video games. So it was a cool way, and I give our football recruiting staff a ton of credit for coming up with that idea.
Hey, Ross, this is Daryl over at KBTX. You mentioned your 13-year-old son. If let's just advance 5 years, and let's say your son's a student athlete at Texas A&M, and heaven forbid something like this happens. Do you think that? I know that these coaches go into these parents' houses and they say, "Hey, we're going to take care of your kids," and then all of a sudden, the NCAA says, "Hey, you can't look after them anymore." I understand the social distancing part, but it almost seems like, they're not able to look after these kids like a parent would look after them, and I think that's important. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems to me like they've kind of gone a little overboard, but I understand it. I just, you want to make sure like an 18-year-old kid is looked after the way a parent wants him looked after.
Yeah, Daryl, my reaction to that is if you and I talked on Thursday, March the 12th, so gosh, that seems like a long time ago, but it's less than 2 weeks ago. The thought process, and this is where my head was as well, is that these young people are better off in our environment, right? They have a secure place to live. They have food. They have their teammates. They've got the training room. We clean our weight room, constantly. We clean our facilities. That they're better off here. And it's just shifted. It's shifted to, what? We know people are carrying this, even though they may not have symptoms. They may not have been tested yet. We know they're a carrier. If they give that to someone who's more at risk, than maybe somebody else, then we have that responsibility. So I think we had, not only a moral, but really a legal responsibility to protect, everyone, not only at the university level, but then each department. And so the mindset has shifted because, like I said, less than 2 weeks ago, I was right there with you that we're better off having these young people stay here because we can contain everything and our facilities are clean. This thing has just evolved. And so, I think what we have learned is that the more we isolate ourselves, the more we can contain this, the quicker that we've heard the flattening of the curve, that we can flatten that curve. But, we also know that in, less than a week, we've had, 0 cases in Brazos County. Now we have 21 as of this afternoon. And so it's evolving, it's moving. But our obligation is to make everyone safe, but especially, our young people and who they come in contact with.
Hey, Ross.
Jeff Carlson here.
Hey, Chuck.
Just wanted to revisit a little bit. You were talking about the summer, and obviously right now not a whole lot of clarity out there. My understanding is the power conferences are holding discussions to at least have common sort of situation standard. Everybody's singing from the same sheet of music, if you will. When people come back as to what may or may not be allowed, what football is going to look like, whether it's late spring, summer, August 1st, whenever. I was just curious, one, have you heard that? Two, do you have any particular things that you would like to see included in that or at least considered?
Yes, so Commissioner Sankey, in our daily calls, they also have an Autonomy 5 commissioner call that he participates in on a regular basis. I'm not sure if that call is, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Can everyone hear? Okay. My AirPods died out on me. So
yeah,
he
you're good.
participates in regular conversations with the other Autonomy 5, Power 5 commissioners. And we would all agree that uniformity would be ideal for the return of our fall sports and how we acclimate heading into the season. So I would agree with that. I think the challenge is going to be if you're a team in New York where it's a hot spot right now, your environment may be different than if you're in Texas. And so I think those things have to be taken into consideration. And obviously we see what's happening in, Louisiana. So I think uniformity will be the goal and the approach. And then I think we'll have to see what kind of environment, everyone has before final decisions are made. But I know that's the conversation. I agree with that. The SEC agrees with that. And now it's fluid, and we'll see what happens from there. And then the elements, again, I think it's just, how do we prepare them in the safest way possible, knowing that it's a highly competitive, and we're just talking football, but I'm also thinking about volleyball and soccer and, cross country. How do we prepare them so that we don't have injuries and they're prepared to compete at the highest level? Those are the kind of things that, if that's mini camps, if that's, acclimation periods, if that's, 8 hours a week, and you can actually have, helmets and shorts, and it follows some of our current protocols. Those are all the kind of things that I think we have to have as part of whatever that plan would look like.
Hey, Ross, Robert Cessna here. First-year guy, these spring sports, I guess at the end of every season, you talk to coaches about where they're at and what they do. So in this situation, do you just give a pass and move on, or are you going to talk to your spring coaches, or you're still waiting to kind of wait? No, how's that play out?
If I was here longer, then maybe I'd have more time to evaluate a sort of a full body, if you will. But only let's just take our spring sports. Only seeing a third of the season, if you will. It's hard to do a full assessment on the performance piece. Now I've been able to operate, see them operate, academically and how they run their program. Off the field, I've been able to observe all those things, but you also have to observe the performance. And so, yeah, in our mind, I don't know if pass is the right word, but it definitely causes us to say, you know what, we're all in this thing together. Let's support our coaches at the highest level. And what do they need to have success? And so perhaps those conversations are more elongated now that we have more time to spend together. But yeah, we don't anticipate changes or anything radical. We need to get through this together, and I believe we have great leaders, and we want to support them. And let's get back on the fields and courts and tracks, in 2020-21.
All right. Does anybody have any other wrap-up question? Anything else? All right. Again, thank you so much for this afternoon. We will send out an advisory that every Tuesday at 1 o'clock will be our time. Ross, anything in wrapping up? Before you do comment, though, I want to thank you for being accessible to these guys as well as we continue to forge these relationships. Anything in closing, Ross?
No, I'm good. Thanks for the time, everyone.